A phone rings. Once. Twice. A third time. The screen lights up, an incoming FaceTime call. The name on the screen is familiar. Too familiar. A name he thought he had finally escaped. He hesitates. Then, with a resigned breath, he answers. A woman's face appears, barely visible in the dim light. Her eyes are swollen, her expression unreadable. Silence lingers between them. Thick. Heavy. Jamal, her voice is unsteady, almost pleading. He exhales. Tiana, what do you want? A pause. A long, unsettling pause. You know what I want. The line crackles. His grip tightens around the phone. He's been here before, this same conversation, these same desperate words. Always the same. Tiana, we've been through this. It's over. Her breathing changes. Shallow. Quick. No, Jamal. It's not. The screen flickers as she shifts, the camera shaking slightly in her hands. Then, something moves in the corner of the frame. A flash of cold metal. Jamal leans forward, eyes narrowing. Tiana, what are you doing? A smirk plays at the corner of her lips, but there's nothing warm in it. You said you'd never leave me. The words don't sound like a plea anymore. They sound like a promise. The call isn't just a call. It's something else. Something far worse. His pulse quickens. A deep, primal fear settles in his chest. Tiana, put that down. The screen distorts for a split second. A glitch. Then, her face comes back into focus, and in her eyes, there's something new. Resignation. I love you, Jamal. A sharp inhale. A deafening bang. The screen goes black. Jamal Carter had always been the type to light up a room. At 28, he was on the brink of something big, a major business deal that promised to elevate his career in music production. His friends called him a visionary, someone who refused to let circumstances define him. Raised in a tight-knit black community in Atlanta, he had built his success from the ground up, with nothing but raw talent and relentless ambition. Love had once been a part of his plan. But not anymore. Not after her. Tiana Rhodes. They met at a music showcase, where she caught his eye with her infectious energy and effortless charm. At first, their love had been the kind that made people jealous, the type that seemed unbreakable. But passion had a way of turning into something else, something darker. The late-night fights, the accusations, the suffocating need to control his every move, it became too much. Jamal had tried to leave with grace. He sat her down, explained that things weren't working, that they had both changed. He thought she understood. She didn't. The messages started almost immediately. Long, emotional paragraphs filled with apologies, promises, and pleas. Then came the late-night calls. The unexpected visits. The lingering eyes watching from the corner of a crowded room. At first, he brushed it off. Love made people act out sometimes. But then, the messages changed. If you loved me, you wouldn't do this. You don't just get to walk away. And then, the one that made his stomach tighten, you'll regret leaving me. Friends noticed the shift too. Her social media became a digital diary of heartbreak and vengeance, cryptic captions, haunting song lyrics, photos of them together with past tenses that made it sound like a funeral. But the most disturbing posts were the ones that hinted at something final. If I can't have him, no one can. Some laughed it off, chalking it up to post-breakup drama. Others felt uneasy but said nothing. And Jamal? He was tired. Tired of the emotional blackmail, tired of walking on eggshells. So he blocked her. Changed his number. Moved on. At least, that's what he thought. What he didn't know was that obsession doesn't disappear when ignored. It festers. It waits. And sometimes, it makes one last call. Jamal's apartment was quiet that night. Just him, his music, and a FaceTime call with a couple of close friends. It was supposed to be a regular night. Laughing, catching up, talking about the future. The kind of call that ends with a simple, "Talk to y'all later." But this time, the call didn't end that way. His phone buzzed. Another call coming through. A familiar name on the screen. Tiana. The same Tiana he had blocked weeks ago. The same Tiana who had spent months trying to pull him back into a relationship he had long since walked away from. One of his friends on the call noticed the hesitation in Jamal's eyes. "You sure you want to answer that?" Jamal exhaled. He knew better. He knew this wouldn't be a quick conversation. But something in him, maybe guilt, maybe exhaustion, made him swipe to accept. Her face appeared on the screen. Red eyes. Tear-streaked cheeks. The kind of crying that isn't about sadness, but something deeper, something that doesn't just go away. "You really not gone, talk to me no more," she whispered. Jamal rubbed his temple. "Tiana, come on. We already talked about this." Her voice cracked. "No, you talked about this. You decided. I never got a say." The tension in the room shifted. His friends, still on the other call, grew quiet, listening in. "T, I don't want to argue with you. It's late." "Late for what?" she shot back. "Late to be my man. Late to remember everything we had." Jamal sighed. "Tiana, don't say my name like that," she cut him off. "Like I'm some stranger." His friend texted him, "Hang up, bro." But Jamal had been through this before. He knew the routine. Let her talk, let her cry, and eventually, the call would end. Only this time, something was different. The tone of her voice. The way her breathing changed. The strange flicker of movement in the background. She sniffled. "I just want to understand why you threw me away like I was nothing." Jamal leaned back on his couch, rubbing his face. "I never did that, T. You know I didn't." Her hand disappeared from the frame for a moment. When it returned, it was holding something. Something small. Something metallic. Jamal squinted at the screen. His posture stiffened. "What is that?" She held it up. "A gun." His friends heard the shift in his voice. The unease creeping in. "Tiana. Stop." She tilted her head, a strange, empty look in her eyes. "You don't love me no more." "T, put that down." Her lips trembled, but her grip on the gun was steady. "If you won't be with me," she whispered, "you won't be with anyone." A loud breath. A sharp inhale. And then, the screen cut to black. The call ended. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then, screaming. Jamal's friends were still on the FaceTime call when it happened. The moment the screen went black, they thought it was a connection issue. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he hung up. But the silence that followed, heavy, unnatural, suffocating, told them otherwise. Then came the sound. Muffled at first. Like something being knocked over. And then, the unmistakable scream of someone in pure, unfiltered terror. One of his friends, shaking, dialed 911. "My boy just got shot," he stammered. "On FaceTime. I don't know where she is. I don't know where he is. I just saw it happen." It didn't take long for police to trace the call to Jamal's apartment. Officers arrived within minutes, kicking down the locked door. And there he was. Sprawled on the floor, phone still beside him. His eyes, wide open. A single gunshot wound to the head. The officers scanned the apartment. No sign of Tiana. She was gone. But gone where? Tiana didn't have a car. She didn't have a known address. But what she did have was a plan. Investigators combed through her social media. Her last post, made just hours before the shooting, was a single sentence: "Some people learn the hard way." Below it, the comments poured in. Confused friends. Concerned family members. But buried in the replies, a cryptic response from a burner account: "See you soon." Detectives didn't need long to trace it. The account was linked to a prepaid phone, purchased in cash at a gas station 2 miles from Jamal's apartment. Security footage showed her standing at the counter, hood up, sunglasses covering half her face. She had been planning this. And now, she was running. A citywide manhunt kicked off. Police released her photo, urging the public to come forward. Days passed. No sightings. No leads. Then, movement. A stolen ID. A bus ticket purchased under a different name. A friend's apartment on the other side of town, where neighbors reported seeing a woman who looked like Tiana but wasn't acting like herself. When police kicked in the door, they found her sitting on the couch. Wearing a wig. Holding a duffel bag stuffed with fake documents, cash, and a prepaid phone. She didn't resist. Didn't speak. Just stared straight ahead, as if she had already accepted her fate. The officers cuffed her and walked her out the door. Flashing cameras. Reporters shouting questions. And then, the words that made headlines everywhere. As they put her in the squad car, she looked up, locked eyes with the camera, and whispered, "He should have answered me the first time." But was this really just about a broken heart? Or was there something even darker lurking beneath the surface? Because when detectives dug deeper into Tiana's past, they found something no one saw coming. Something even Jamal never knew. And that changed everything. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back rows, cameras clicked, and hushed whispers filled the air as Tiana was led inside. She didn't look like the same woman from the viral news footage. No wig. No carefully planned disguise. Just a quiet, pale figure in an oversized jumpsuit, wrists cuffed in front of her. For the first time since her arrest, she finally spoke in public. "I loved him," she whispered to her attorney. "That's all I ever did." But love wasn't on trial. Murder was. The prosecution wasted no time. They laid out the evidence piece by piece: the obsessive messages, the fake suicide threats, the purchase of the gun, the FaceTime call that ended in bloodshed. This wasn't a moment of passion, the prosecutor told the jury. This was calculated. She wanted to own him, and when she realized she couldn't, she erased him. Tiana's defense tried to paint a different picture. She had been emotionally unstable. She wasn't thinking clearly. She acted out of heartbreak, not malice. Her attorney stood before the jury and asked the unthinkable: what if she didn't even realize what she was doing? They called in a psychiatrist who claimed Tiana had been in a dissociative state at the time of the shooting. A mental fog where reality and impulse blurred. The prosecution fired back. Then why did she run? The jury didn't need long to decide. Guilty. First-degree murder. Life without the possibility of parole. Tiana didn't cry. Didn't flinch. Just stared ahead, like she'd already known how this would end. But the case left behind more than just a guilty verdict. People started asking hard questions. How many times had Jamal's friends seen the warning signs and brushed them off? How often do victims ignore red flags, believing love will fix what's broken? The courtroom may have closed its doors, but outside, a bigger conversation had just begun. Because for every Jamal and Tiana, there are countless others, walking the same dangerous line. And not all of them make it out alive. Jamal Carter's story didn't end with a guilty verdict. His family still wakes up every day to a world where he no longer exists. His mother still stares at her phone, expecting a text that will never come. His friends replay that FaceTime call in their heads, haunted by the moment they saw his future slip away in real time. One person's obsession destroyed so many lives. And it happens more often than people realize. How does love turn into something unrecognizable? When does heartbreak become dangerous? The warning signs were there, hidden in text messages, disguised as late-night calls, buried in promises that sounded more like threats. So many victims dismiss those signs. They think it's just emotions. They don't really mean it. Until they do. Jamal's story is a tragedy. But it doesn't have to be just a tragedy. It can be a warning. It can be a conversation that saves someone else. What should someone do when an ex refuses to let go? How do you handle a situation when "I love you" turns into "if I can't have you, no one will"? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you or someone you know has ever been in a toxic relationship, share your story. Someone out there might need to hear it. For more true crime cases that expose the hidden dangers in everyday life, make sure to subscribe. Because sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that are real.